Can you hear me now? No.
Got you.
Okay, I can hear you now too.
I realized last time I couldn't hear you. It was only because my volume was all the way down.
Are you kidding me? Classic.
Yep, classic.
I don't know why I didn't think to tell you that or to check that.
I'm gonna go get my headphones real quick.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Yep. Check.
Gotcha.
Cool. Chess Smith, this is the grid. It is November 3rd. It is 2022.
What a day, David Lee Scales.
How's the weather down there in San Diego?
Crazy windy. It is crazy windy. I just drove to pick up some coffee and bacon and hold on here, sorry. Saw the ocean. I have not seen a victory like sea that way in a long time.
I know we haven't had this style of weather. It's cold, obviously super windy. We haven't had it in a very long time, but it's kind of nice so that you don't feel any responsibility to go surfing. You know what I mean? Like there's no draw to the ocean. You're just like, you have the day off, you can work.
It'd be hard on days like today to be a kite surfer or a windsurfer where the cold wind comes up and that's your time to shine.
Totally. Absolutely. Yeah.
Especially
if you also surf when the weather is good. So then every time you have to go do something.
Yeah.
Well, hey, what's going on in your world? I've got some news stories. You and I are in hot water on Beach Grit. The fans are revolting. Where should we begin the conversation?
Let's go there. Let's go right away to the revolt, to the existential revolt.
I think this is good. We need people, we need surf ads to hold us accountable. This kind of theme pops up occasionally, but surf ads did a phenomenal job of kind of tracking the origin story, giving some context, and I think tapping into what a lot of people feel.
He did good work. And shame on me and Derek and you.
He starts off by saying, this article is published on Beach Grit, by the way, but he starts off by saying, there's a mate of mine who I grew up with, surfing with, who is a real pain in the ass. One of those guys who every time he sees you can cut you down with a simple, devastating quip. It might be about my hair, my weight, the board I'm riding, the turn I just bogged. He's catty, clever, incisive. Sometimes I can't stand him, but goddamn, he hits the mark. I am getting balder, fatter. I do ride ridiculous boards. I am still a massive kook. I will always love him. He holds me to account in a way that few others will. He goes on to make the analogy that is what Beach Grit is, and that is what Beach Grit does for the community. They've mastered the art of self-referential clickbait by relying on Google AdSense and click revenue from non-endemic advertising. Beach Grit has gained true independence from the surf media's cottage industry while raking in the biggest online audience, a model that the rest of the surf world is quickly waking up to. But more importantly, the joint isn't afraid to kill our idols when they need to tell the truth. In a world of toxic positivity, tall poppy syndrome ain't the worst thing in the world. It does mean certain sacrifices, things that can get a bit nasty at times. The definition of surf and surf adjacent can become blurred. But recently, there has become an imbalance. You know what I'm talking about. The wild reporting on Giselle and Kelly, Tom Brady, Shakira, Seth Green, Bill Murray, Emrata, blatant gaming of trending names and keywords, increasingly loose links to anything surf related. Surf adjacent has become surf spurious. At least Jonah Hill had some tangible connection to our pastime. We could forgive the incessant gossip and speculation over his love life, his career, his acting career, his achingly indie quiver. But these latest efforts, to paraphrase Colonel Kilgore, Giselle don't surf. Here's where I even turned on a recent episode of the podcast with Chaz and David, and it's generally a good time, expressed in the same idiom as its online sister publication, but with a knowing wink to the audience thrown in, an opportunity to peek behind the curtain, break the fourth wall, have a chuckle at how ridiculous things are, a chance for DLS to pull Chaz in line. But instead, on the most recent episode, even Scales had now turned into a simpering lackey, pushing simple Dorothy Dixers to Chaz about the latest rash of celebrity articles. It was a bridge too far. If DLS wasn't going to keep the bastard honest, who will? Me? Okay, well, I'll try. So he goes on to try to keep you honest and me honest and Derek honest. He says the biggest little surf website on the internet has grown even bigger. It's been a wild success in terms of ad revenue, I'm sure, but at what cost? With each new celebrity story, I find myself less interested and engaged. It's like my mate in the surf stooped down to mum jokes or internet referencing conspiracy rants. I switch off. Chaz and Derek were concerned about whether or not they could. They didn't stop to think whether or not they should.
Damning David Lee Scales.
It's true. It's damning.
Well
It's
said.
true. How do you respond?
I mean, funny enough, I suppose. I wake up every morning to beach grit and beach grit throughout every day, 7 days a week. My real primary goal, I suppose, is still just to make Derek Riley laugh. And so he and I go back and forth, and also amuse myself, right? And so, sure, there's times when stuff goes wildly one way or wildly the other. And, think of the shark years and the whoop years and now the celebrity years. Well, I guess they're not years, months. And it's still me having fun and Derek having fun. And I totally get it's not fun for others, but it's still fun for me. And so I'll go and keep doing it until I stop having fun.
Well, I think that what Surf Ad's saying is even during those years, there was some connection to surfing. It's just gotten further and further and further to now where it's almost impossible to make the connection back to surfing.
But to me, that's the funniest thing ever, right? Is like stretching surfing out into broader pop culture and being able to tag or tack surfing onto anything, to me is funny. I get how it's not funny to others, and that is totally fine that it's not funny for them, but it is still funny for me. And so I'll continue to do it for my own amusement.
Well, sure. I'm not even sure that Surf Ads is saying it isn't funny. I think he could still find humor in it, but he can go elsewhere to find funny things about Emrata. He can't go elsewhere to find funny things about surfing. I think that's what his complaint is. Like he wants to come here. This is his home. It's just that the home is no longer talking about the one thing that he goes there to see it talked about.
That's true. And to, again, I thought his article was spot on. And the real problem is imbalance, right? Is that I've gone way too far that way without sort of another anchor to hold the other side, the proper surf side. But like on one hand, on the other hand, though, there's been as much as the WSL, I suppose, has done to kind of whitewash surfing and wall of positive noise it, there's very little happening in surfing right now, right? I mean, it's not like I don't think like what would we, I can continue. I just did this morning another story on Eric Logan's ridiculous projections for growth, right? Like these kinds of things, that's more or less all there is. There's some good surf movies. And I think we highlight those when they come out. Oh man, I got to talk about a surf movie with you. Speaking of, are you on the jury for the docos?
Yeah.
Oh
Yeah.
man, I got on early this year and actually watched them.
Did you watch Facing Monsters, or which one are you talking about?
Doggy Door really blew me away.
Oh yeah.
Through the Doggy Door was an epic bit of storytelling, like top to bottom. But anyway, like I don't know, there seems less happening in surfing right now. And maybe tell me that I'm wrong. Tell me that I've got celebrity blinders on, but I feel like I'm trying to have fun in the playground with the few toys that are left, or bringing new toys in, and let's all have fun with these new toys.
So a couple of thoughts. You don't just have celebrity blinders on, you also have Stab Magazine blinders on. And I hate to tell you, but so much of what's happening in surfing right now, they are creating, they are generating. Yeah. And so the Stab High event, they're publishing, I think, 4 or 5 episodes of it, and episode 1 dropped last week. It's a phenomenal piece, and it also has created a couple potential surf stars out of it. There's like this 13-year-old kid, Huey, from Australia, that I had never heard of before. There's a South African kid. There's just a couple of new people that, in the way that magazines used to launch careers, it's like, wow, I didn't know these people existed. They've been shredding around the world probably for a decade, wherever they're from. They don't have any mainstream sponsors. There's no real method for them to get showcased to the world other than this now, you know? So there's that. There's the how surfers make money stuff that we talked about a couple of weeks ago. There's these things that they're doing that are very worth discussing, but you got the blinders on. And so you're not, or I mean, I engage you in the discussion and you can engage to it kind of based on your own personal experience or what Cersei's doing for work. But those are the things that are happening.
That's true. You a good point. And stabs come up is like good for them, right? With the content and all that kind of stuff. Again, I don't know, beach grit is beach grit. And I think it goes in waves. It goes up and down, and we'll find another fun thing to all laugh about, I think, together. But oddly, I never worry about it. Beach grit is its own monster. And yeah, it'll continue on.
Well, let me ask you this, because surf ads didn't say this, but it's something that I think about all the time. Do you care less about surfing now than you used to?
I think I've always cared about surfing as it intersects with culture. And so that's still what I'm interested in, right? Like I love to surf, but again, growing up in Oregon as basically a kook, I don't know what's cool. I don't know, I didn't have the Southern California pedigree upbringing. And so I've never felt very, I don't know, like an authority on that kind of stuff. What I have always loved my entire surf riding career, from Welcome to Paradise through the way I used to cover the tour, all this kind of stuff, it's all one and the same thing, right? It is like a non sequitur kind of connection, surfing connected to another storyline is what I've always done. And I feel that's what this sort of celebrity run is now, is again, it's tenuous and people clearly aren't, or Beach Grit's core audience is clearly not enjoying it. Like, or the most vocal ones are not enjoying it. But it's still funny for me. And that's what I think I've always done. And so to answer your question, I'm just as interested in surfing, but again, it's always how surfing intersects with culture.
Yeah, which is exactly Surf Ad's original point, is there's not as much intersection now with the stories as there used to be.
That's true. I need to do a better job tying the knots.
I think what he was saying is largely true, but I still like talking about Emrata. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like when I try to surf alone most times now, but for the first 10 or 20 years of my life, I surfed with my best friends mainly. And when we're in the water, we weren't talking about, I mean, maybe we were talking a little bit about Dane Reynolds' new clip that he dropped, or Kelly Slater winning a contest. That was 10% of our conversation. The other 90% was how hot the Emrata of the time was, and maybe she intersected with surf culture. Maybe she did those swimsuit ads for Hurley and Body Glove and stuff. That's what we were talking about. You know what I mean?
I mean, and again, I've been trying to pull Beach Grit this way, and with resistance often, like if I try to insert politics or whatever, right? But I think anything surfers are talking about is a surf conversation. Like surfers have a unique point of view based on how we choose to spend our time and stuff like that. I think surfers are innately kind of weird, but weird in the same way. And so if two surfers are having a conversation then about celebrity or about politics or about something, anything not surf related, to me it's still a surf conversation because surfers are having it. But I'm clearly in the minority currently believing that or thinking that. But also I'm like willing, and I think this is what makes why I love so much working with Derek. He's willing to burn the whole house down on let's just do what we want, right? And if that's what we want, then let's just push it and see. And I've done enough in my life where people really hate something, like initially hate. And then later they'll say, oh, that was actually good or funny or whatever, right? Like when I don't know, that coverage of somebody referenced it in the comments of I covered the European leg of the world tour, and for Stab, like it must have been 17 years ago or something. And all I wrote about was hanging out with an investment banker, right? And at the time, people were furious about that. But now I'll get people saying that, like, oh, that was, they enjoyed that, irreverent take on contest coverage. And so to me, you can never base, like, as long as I feel like I'm going in some direction and that Derek and I are moving in some direction, that people will come along eventually, even if they're mad in the short term, even if they don't get it. And sometimes I don't get it. Sometimes I'm just creating on the fly, but oftentimes it turns into something that later I'm proud of. Not that I'm going to be proud of Brad and Giselle or Giselle and Kelly stories, but I might be. To me, a lot of them are super funny, and I had fun writing them.
I think that's what I love about our audience as well, or the audience that I've gotten to know through the podcast thing over the years, is that they do hold us accountable for staying true to that goal that you're talking about. Because when you're generating as much content as we're generating, you can be sloppy about it, and you can just take the easy path at times just to hit the deadline. And so I think of Surf Ads as a trusted, I think Surf Ads understands the vision. And so he's a trusted investor in the vision, and he can be trusted to hold you or I accountable. And so over the years, I get feedback every single week on various podcasts, DMs, emails, and I take all of it with a grain of salt. And some of it is just, insulting, basically, for the sake of being rude or whatever, or negative. And some of it stings because there is a morsel of truth to it. And I've learned that those ones that sting are the ones that you kind of have to evaluate, and you realize, oh yeah, I did say something incorrectly, or something that was just blatantly untrue, or something that was mean-spirited, or whatever it was. And so Surf Ads doesn't stop listening or stop reading because of it. He's still going to, and even signs off the letter with, always, forever grateful, or forever in love, or whatever it was, something like that. But that little bit of correction can help, correct the ship.
Totally. I mean, I completely agree, and love criticism is important. And it's, of course, always stopping and evaluating. Okay, what's happening, what needs to happen. I think sometimes in the throes of it, it's hard when it comes down to kind of a creative vision thing because, like, trapping something, Beach Grit has always been pretty fluid, right? And trapping it and making it a thing, I think all of a sudden you start rotting it, right? Like if we said, okay, we're going to just it's going to be critical of the WSL. It's going to be, we're going to keep these parameters in place. It's going to be this, that, and the other thing. I think it could very easily get stale. I think what we're missing right now, or what we need more of, is insightful articles, more long read stuff, a wider variety of better material while I'm throwing, junk at the wall. But it's also, Byline is ultra hard surf candy. I mean, it is what it is. And I think, and we've had insightful pieces, and the freak out of a month of celebrity stories is both endearing. Like it makes me love that people love Beach Grit that much. They get mad at it, right? They're mad that it's not what they want it to be anymore. And if they didn't care, they wouldn't care, right? The anger is great. But again, I don't know, I never want this thing to become stale.
I agree. I think the aperture has to open to include what Stab's doing, because there's such a kind of big player in the space now that it's impossible to not discuss, I
mean, Stab becoming sort of a rival tour in a way to the WSL is interesting. And yeah, I mean, I suppose that's the way it needs to be approached. The problem is, and again, like for all the people who get furious at the celebrity articles and whatnot, like I hate paywalls, right? And so it's really hard for me to, like, not just with Stab, I hate paywalls in general. I do not like the idea of a paywall. And so it's hard for me to think, okay, I'm just not going to do it. I'm not going to pay Stab to watch surf stuff.
Well, you don't have to watch the premium stuff, but I think the Stab High thing's free. It's on YouTube.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay. I'll start engaging their free content.
Yeah. I mean, and also the fact that they're involved in running the Pipe Masters is a major indicator, you know, like that has to be discussed. So I think you're right. The idea of running the adjacent tour, not even it's not even a tour, just running adjacent events to the tour that are actually more interesting events and better in a lot of ways, I think is certainly a storyline. It's kind of a historical storyline, you know, a historical moment that needs to
For
be
sure.
commented
Documented.
on.
Documented well.
And the final thing I'll say on this topic that Surf Ads brought up is, and I don't think it necessarily relates to what Beach Grit is doing, but I think about it all the time, is you change and evolve as a content creator and what your interests are. And so it would make sense that the theme of the project would change and evolve as well. And I think about Dane Reynolds as kind of being the primary example of this. We all fell in love with Dane for 4 years when he was kind of at the height of his surfing abilities, and also his just ethos as being kind of aloof, you know, with having $4 million a year and with having all the attention on the world on him. And then he became a family man. And all of us were like, no, you're not allowed to gain 20 pounds. Like, look, and you start poking fun at his waistline and like, why aren't you posting? What happened to Marine Layer? Why aren't you posting as much content as you used to, you know? And Dane had evolved. And to be honest, he'd probably become happier and more actualized and more fulfilled and all these other things. But we just wanted Dane to be Dane. And so he's done a marginally decent job at maintaining a profile while he's pursuing these other interests. And now he has Chapter 11 and he has a clothing line. So he's still kind of being involved in a little bit of the limelight or the spotlight. But we really just wanted Dane to do him, you know, and it's kind of sad to see him evolve away from it. So I always think about, how do you, if you are less involved in surfing, I know you said you're not, but if you're less interested in surfing, how do you evolve the project to still service the core audience, you know, without becoming like, without just becoming a full sellout and selling it off and letting other people run it and it becoming the inertia or whatever.
I mean, that's the game and the dance, right? And I don't by any means think that I'm getting it right or getting it right all the time. And back to what I said first, the only thing I can do that I know that I can get right is entertaining myself or Derek. And as long, I mean, that's what I wake up and think, what's going to make me chuckle? What's going to make Derek chuckle? Because all the rest of it, you keep exactly to your point. If Dane tried to stay Dane circa, what were his like power years, like 2006 through 10 or whatever it was.
Sure.
Imagine how embarrassing that would look now, right? If you don't evolve.
Yeah.
If Dane looked that, if he was doing the same stuff and, you know, being the same Dane as back then, he would look like a total, I don't know, it would be weird. He'd be like trapped but once you move away from what people like, you never know where you're going to end up or if they're going to like the new thing. But I just have no idea how to gauge that other than, again, making myself laugh and Derek laugh.
Yeah, exactly. That's a good true north, I think, to stick with. Real quick timeout. Are you on your computer or your phone?
My computer, is it bad?
No, it's the microphone on the ear pods is not great. Can you go down to where the microphone icon is and see if you could just use the computer speaker rather than those? I mean, you could just still use those.
I'll just take the headphones out.
Okay. I was going to say.
No need. Can you hear me?
That's much better. Yeah.
Okay, great. Sorry.
Because like I use mine to listen, but use a different microphone to talk. Because it's tinny for some reason.
Thinking AirPods.
I know. You would think they'd work better than the external mic, but all right, we're back with a clearer audio.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, so thanks for that, Surf Ads. I've got some listener. Actually, let's go to the story about Kim Thompson that you wrote. This is a tragic story, but worth discussing. Kim Thompson. News broke overnight that Kim Thompson had died following a horrific motorcycle accident in Thailand. The iconic surfboard shaper who founded the brand Water Cooled in Torquay Australia in 1975, had been living in Thailand for decades and working for the Cobra factory. Surveillance footage shows Thompson losing control as he attempted to dodge a truck pulling a trailer and slammed into an electrical pole, then skidding along the ground. Just a quick little background. Kim Thompson started surfing in the longboard era in the 60s. He was the junior state champion. He had been shaping since the age of 15, and his shapes are evolutions of decades of development, transitioning some great designs in all forms. In 1969, he was shaping for John Arnold in Adelaide. Then he moved to Dan Burford's in 1970. For many years, he was based in Thailand, where he was invited to join Cobra, where he was instrumental in setting up a world-class surfboard production facility that makes boards for people all over the world. Kim Thompson, Chas Smith.
Were you aware of Kim Thompson before yesterday?
Yes.
I was less aware of them than I should have been. I realized, like, I was just researching after and thought, oh man, he really was like a pioneer in a lot of different ways.
Yeah, his name always comes up over the years. I mean, I think once he kind of signed on with Cobra, he wasn't as engaged in day to day and everybody's kind of awareness, but his name would come up over the years as I talked to surfboard shapers around the world of somebody who they, were connected to in some way. But I'll tell you, two things popped. So rest in peace, Kim Thompson. Tragic story, but two things stood out to me in this. The first one is, should anybody be riding motorcycles ever at this point on the street, like in traffic?
I mean, you could get hit with the same as a car. Like, this was a real freak thing, right? I mean, you're way more exposed, obviously, in a motorcycle. But if you're in, Thailand near Bangkok, I mean, there's just no way you're going to get around through the gridlock unless you're cruising a bike. I mean,
That's true.
Places like Bali too, right? And it's a horrible tragedy. But I hear you. Like, it seems like you're really taking unnecessary risk, but especially places like that. Like, I think it's the only way to get around. If you expect to move around, that's the only way to go.
I stand corrected. It is a regional thing. And motorcycles certainly have a purpose in lots of places in the world. I just know here in Southern California, I've had friends, family who works in hospitals, and they were like, every single night, motorcycle accident, injuries come in, like, it's, if you're riding a motorcycle in traffic anywhere in Southern California, it's not a matter of if you're going to be maimed, it's kind of a matter of when. And so I grew up riding motorcycles, mainly off-road, like dirt bikes, but I never had an interest in doing it, in traffic, just because there's so many bad drivers.
It really,
no matter how good of a motorcycle rider you are.
It really is fun. I mean, it is not a risk that I'm willing to take anymore at this stage in my life, I suppose. But
yeah,
and the times that I've ridden street bikes, it's like driving can be fun in the right car, right? But depending on traffic and stuff, riding a motorcycle makes getting from point A to point B always fun.
It does. It's just you're so vulnerable.
It's just like paddling out at overhead Huntington Beach, though. It's worth the risk sometimes.
On Huntington, maybe not, but lots of other places for sure. My other thought with that was, it's captured on video.
Yeah.
So do you watch the video is the question.
I mean, I'm not one to watch those kinds of videos. Are you? I watched that one. It's CCTV, so it happens real quick. It's like kind of blurry. You can't really see. But yeah, was never a faces of death kind of guy.
I used to have some interest in it. I have less and less appetite for it the older I get.
Yeah, I mean, knowing what happened, the description was there in the write-up, and like, what does that add to see it?
Yeah, nothing.
Yeah,
bad memories is all it adds. It's crazy though how everything is captured on video nowadays. I mean, almost truly everything.
Does speaking of Kim Thompson, back to Cobra, is there as much anger at Cobra now as there used to be?
Yeah, I think so.
There's still, I don't hear it as much. I remember used to hear it with a real seething rage.
I don't. So the answer probably is no. There's not as much anger and vitriol. the degree is slightly less, but there is still a negative connotation that remains.
Yeah. Well,
I think for listeners who are unaware, it's a massive surfboard factory. It is the equivalent of, let's say, Henry Ford's assembly line for manufacturing way back in the day, where they've really streamlined the processes, and their kind of major unlock is land cost and labor costs were a lot lower in Thailand. So that's kind of why they could build a giant surfboard factory and automate a lot of the processes. The criticism from a lot of domestic board builders, whether they be in Australia or the US or anywhere else, was, there's environmental protection concerns in maybe Australia and the US that weren't necessarily in place there. Cobra Factory, I think, has come out and said, no, we hold ourselves and our employees and protect our employees to the same standards that you do elsewhere in the world, even if the government doesn't necessarily. And then the other kind of criticism from Australia and the US was skilled labor. If you're paying people lower wages, they're not necessarily invested in making a career out of it. And so you have transient employees that are coming and going. And I think Cobra has made statements about that as well, that their employees are highly skilled laminators or whatever else. So
yeah.
that was the main criticisms.
Oh.
But they manufacture surfboards for a lot of people around the world.
Is there more Cobras that have popped up, or is Cobra still the only one?
I don't know. I think that's kind of the only fact. I think they only have one factory.
Yeah. But is there, nobody else has tried to copy that model? Nobody else has built a giant factory somewhere else?
I think a lot of surfboard brands have built large factories in Southeast Asia that they then manufacture boards in for their own brand and then ship them somewhere to distribute in Australia or California or whatever. But
Cobra's the biggest.
Not that they're manufacturing for other brands as well. They do it for their own brand, Another interesting topic coming from a listener. Sketchy Landings says, hey, thanks for all the podcasts you guys produce. I know you've touched on this before, but I think it's fascinating how surfing is the only extreme sport where a slight sketchiness is preferred to clean perfection. In my mind, it applies to both free surfing and competitive surfing. I prefer a wave where a person barely makes it, be it an air or a barrel. However, when I think of skating or snowboarding, I prefer everything super clean. Curious to know what you guys think. Is it also contradictory to all other things in the Olympics? Keep up the work, Kevin.
Great point. I mean, I think the difference, I'm thinking specifically about snowboarding, right? There's like a good clean line in snowboarding. Yeah, you don't want people sketching out. I mean, the only time that something, or for my money, looks super cool, like, is people running away from avalanches. I'm always like, where it's just white knuckle craziness. But he's right. In surfing, you want a crazy late drop that's almost not stuck. And then coming out behind the spit, like almost falling over the board, Yeah. I mean, that's what feels the best. Like I think of Idolo's wave at the box, right? When he, like, that thing where it's just none of it's clean. It's all on the absolute edge of he's going over. No, he made it.
Well, yeah, Kevin's entirely right in his assessment, but I think there's an implication in his assessment that the surfer has somehow failed by barely making it, which is not what's actually happening. What's actually happening is that in skating and in snowboarding, it's the surface is the same. And so it's up to the rider to perfect what they're doing on that surface. For the wave, what's happening is it's a surfer doing the unthinkable on that section. So that wave that you're talking about with Idolo, nobody was supposed to make. And the fact that he sketchily barely makes it is a testament to his prowess. It's because nobody else would have made that section. And when somebody barely lands in air, it's because they hit a radical section that nobody else would have hit. So they are pushing the boundaries of what we thought was conceivable.
Is Kevin though saying that he likes that in surfing? Or did you read that he doesn't like that part of surfing?
I think he's saying he loves it when he loves the sketchiness, barely making a barrel, barely making the air. But I'm suggesting the reason why he loves it is because he was predisposed to think that the surfer wouldn't have even gone for it, or no other surfer would have made it. So by the time that surfer sketchily lands it, it's like, oh, it's amazing because nobody else would have done it. You know what I mean?
I mean, I think that is exactly right. And if you saw somebody doing a super sketchy drop that should have been a nice, clean, easy one, I don't think that would look good, right? If somebody was like windmilling their arms like on something that they should have like a section that would have been no problem to paddle into, versus like if they're windmilling though, air dropping down the face and stick it, then it's like, oh, sweet. So the sketchiness, you're exactly right. Sketchiness comes, the enjoyable parts about the sketchiness come in the pushing the boundaries of what's possible.
Except this is exactly where claims come into question when we're watching contests, because the claim often is not when somebody did the unthinkable. They're doing it to make you think they did the unthinkable. You know what I mean? They're doing it to amplify the perception of the difficulty of what they just did when we know it was only a 6-point ride. You know,
I mean, the best part about claims still, I think, is that you can't get away with. I mean, you can get away with convincing the judges when you fist pump on a 4.9. I mean, what was Kanoa's wave that he really celebrated? Was it a 4?
Huntington. I mean, oh yeah, he's had very many, but yes, there was like a 4, 6, 7.
And you may be able to convince the judges to give you a percentage point up, but you cannot convince the surf fan that was worthwhile claiming. Like that will forever be hung around your neck as that was an embarrassment. And so
totally,
like I love the almost self-policing of claims, and I wish or hope, and I think the judges do by and large. I don't think they reward based on claim.
Well,
can you think of a time where you thought that wave sucked and then this person claimed and then they got a better score?
I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but I think that the judges would never admit to being influenced by the claim, but there is an emotional tug at the heartstrings if they do believe that the surfer earnestly thought that was an impressive completion.
I mean, I don't know though. I think the judges are all surfers in the core of their hearts. And I think if they see something and then see a wild claim, they think, oh, why are you doing that, man? Your wave was not that good.
Judging surfing is the most unnatural profession that I can even think of. And I know we've touched on this plenty, but try to do a brief overview here. If you are, like you said, a true fan of surfing, which you should be, in order to be a judge, the qualification should be you are an expert surfer. Yeah. You know what I mean? And the reality is they're probably not expert surfers, but you have to at least love the thing and be an expert kind of assessor of the thing.
Have an expert eye.
Okay, so if that is all true, then inherent is that you have a favorite surfer. You know, like anybody who got into surfing loves John for a reason or loves Gabriel for a reason. So how do you divorce yourself from that entirely? It's actually impossible to do. It's like saying, stop liking your favorite food, stop liking your favorite song or whatever. And that's what the judges are required to do just to get their foot in the door. It's impossible. It's a futile effort.
Do you think you could be an adequate surf judge?
I would be yes, I could be adequate at it, but I would never be objective at it. I would, even if I was doing it, I would admit to you, this is completely biased based on my own preferences.
I mean, I guess
the fact that they say it isn't is kind of crazy.
The World Surf League rarely addresses it, I feel, like the judging. Oh, I guess Elo just did in some interview, which was behind a paywall again, so I didn't read. But
I didn't read it either.
Address some judging thing, like addressed how much better it is this year, how much I didn't read it. You and comment on it. Addressed somehow judging, but they rarely do address it. I feel like I think they assume if it's not broke, don't fix it, and the complainer is going to complain, right?
It's so broke.
I mean, it seems when there's that much. Yeah, I mean, it seems like there'd be a better way to do it. Again, I mean, I've always said this: you wait until after the heat and then you score it.
Right.
Like, I have no idea why they think they need real-time scores per heat. Like, where
So
you set the bar somewhere and then, oh, we set it too high or set it too low or whatever. You just take that problem away. Judge score every heat when it's done.
it's totally broke. And it's, like I said, it's a futile effort kind of from the get-go. But Elo's acknowledgement of, man, the judging got so much better this year is an implicit admission that it was crappy before. But before is when he was telling us that it was not broken and it was good. You know what I mean?
I mean, the whole
That
thing
constantly happens.
I mean, yeah, I mean, WSL, it's not even worth really talking about anymore. But
No, it
honestly,
really
they keep reaching new peaks of, yeah. He had an Instagram post that had some outtakes from his Shop Eat Surf interview, and just the business speak, talking about growth across vectors and stuff like that. It's just, are you kidding me?
I know.
Who, like, I get it, and I guess Shop Eat Surf is a industry publication, and so whatever, if he's telling the industry how much they're growing, that's good. The surf fan doesn't care about the WSL's radical growth across platforms, right? They want to watch surfing, and the surf fan can see, well, the surfing I'm watching is getting worse and worse year on year, right? Like,
Right.
so you're great, you guys are having crazy growth and set to make more revenue than you've ever made before. But we have Surf Ranch again this year. We have the tour ending at lowers and blah 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 blah. Like, I don't know how talking about your wild growth is beneficial.
I don't pay for the premium thing for Shop Eat Surf, but occasionally I'm inclined to, because they do good work, and I would be happy to support them, and I'm kind of interested in some of the things that they talk about. But when Eric published that on Instagram, there was a moment where I was like, man, maybe I should finally pay for this subscription so I could actually read what is discussed here. But he did those pull quotes and posted them in his comment or in his caption, and it dissuaded me from getting the subscription.
Yep.
I read it, I'm just like, oh no, more of this,
Yeah.
more of this mealy mouth like nonsense.
I mean, isn't that what all any like corporate speak stuff? I mean, it's what's annoyed me again, like or dislike Beach Grit. At least we're not corpo speak mealy mouth, like that kind of nonstop where you're expected to say things in a certain way, and that's what it is. And Eric delivers it perfectly. And I'm sure most other business leaders that they interview on there are the same exact thing, right? Of like talking about growth and projections and the way that you're supposed to. Nobody's going in there like, I don't know, we're trying to do something different or whatever.
Well, it's always positivity, and yes, it's growth, and it's always a positive shine on what we just did and what we're planning to do next. Always, there's never any critical assessment or anything. But then, like I said, when you read the later article, it is acknowledging failures from the previous version. So it's like, why didn't you know what I mean? It's very disingenuous is what it ends up feeling.
I mean, I would love for them to sit and say, oh, this is where we blew it, right? This is the places that we feel like we've gone wrong, without turning the negative into a positive kind of thing. Like the classic job interview, my one weakness is that I'm on time too much. I'm always just right on time. Right. And too much of that.
Totally. The final thing I'll say about judging, because it came up, I was talking to Scott Bass and I just kind of landed on the thought, but I had never thought of it before. And it is that with the way the judging criteria for the WCT, it doesn't allow and it doesn't reward innovation.
Yeah.
Because anytime somebody does something, think of like from the moments people started doing airs, it was downscored.
Yeah.
Air reverses came along, downscored. Somebody does a pop shove it, judges are just like, that's a 3. I don't even know what that was. That's a 3. I mean, Kelly Slater does a backflip, don't judge it. I mean, every step of the way. Josh Kerr doing a club sandwich at Snapper against Mick Fanning, don't score it.
Yeah.
That is the most radical turn ever. And now, by the way, 15 years later, it's getting awarded an 8. But when he did it 15, how is it possible that 15 years ago, it got a lower score than it got now. And it's because the structure of the judging criteria does not reward innovation. It doesn't know how to account for it.
I mean, that's the thing, is you'd think that all the judges would be, and I'm sure they are competent enough surfers to know how difficult that stuff is. Pop shove it, I will give them, I'll give them a little grace on that one, because shove it's usually happen at the end of the wave, right? Like if the real meat of the scoring is coming on the critical part of the wave. But like, yeah, I mean, you're exactly right. They don't, I mean, the fact that a pop shove it gets a 3, I think they look pretty cool. I think they should reassess what's a pop shove it worth.
So basically what they're doing is looking at all surfing that we've seen in the past and trying to create a criteria for that. And so they come up with words like speed, power, flow. You know, these are what make for great surfing. But once you're looking backwards, it's already backwards. It's already counter, you know. So really what they should be doing is sitting down with the biggest kind of movers and shakers of today and being like, where is surfing going? And that's what we should be rewarding. That's what we should be designing for. Design for something we haven't even seen yet, you know?
I mean, totally. And I mean, you're exactly right. And put the criteria instead of just speed, power, and flow. I mean, why not throw creativity in there, right? If you do something that nobody's ever seen done in a contest, then automatically you're going to get rewarded for it. Like, which push, because what even is the point in chancing anything now in a surf contest? If you can hit the lip still good 3 times, like really solid wax, like slight variation, right? Like one kind of roundhousey, one more vertical, and one with a little tail slide, then you're off, you know, it's at least a 6 right there.
Sonny Garcia, I mean, well before Sonny, I could probably think of examples, but Sonny Garcia won a world title by relying on 2 big turns to get an 8-point ride. Connor Coffin finished 4th in the world, relying on 2 big turns to get an 8-point ride, while all of his competitors were doing 3 turns and then an air rotation. And then they get an 8 or a 9, you know, and Connor stick to 2 big turns, 8-point ride. So that is still relevant. It always was. Maybe it always should be, by the way. I mean, that could be argued.
A big turn, I think, is something like, and variate degrees of turn, like really, I mean, I'm a big turn fan, like, and Connor's turns I love, right? And Sonny's turns. And when you see a big Dane's turns, right? I mean, I think Dane was better on the face of the wave than he ever was above the lip. And his above the lip stuff is epic, but it's Dane's turns were works of art, right?
Yeah.
And so
explosive, but because they're also innovative. They're relying on the things from the past that we know and love, but they're also innovative.
And they're not, and those, I mean, the people specifically that we're talking about here, those turns were never safe, right? Like it was, they were like, and anybody who surfs, of course, knows when you're flying down, like for your average Joe, going as fast as you can on your board and ready to set your rail and make a turn, like it's hard to even go like 20% and make it, right? Like, and those guys are going, when they're at 100%, it's as risky or radical as anything.
For sure. So if you design for the criteria for show us something that we've never seen before, and that will get rewarded. And somebody let's say does it would be Gabriel Medina or Idolo is in a barrel and they do a shove it in the barrel, you know, and then come out backwards. Then we can all decide whether or not a shove it is techie versus, you know, actually difficult to do or whatever else. Like there's conversation there to be had in terms of, I subjectively think this is more techie and this is more power based and power has more relevance to surfing. So I'm going to downscore it, but at least design for the innovation. At least say we're going to reward something that we've never seen before.
You're exactly right. You're exactly right. And if it gets scored poorly in the future, then I feel that's a better problem to have than underscoring stuff and scoring them better in the future, right? Like It's better to score something big that we've never seen now. And then, if everybody starts doing it, it becomes easy. Then it gets watered down, right?
Yeah, completely. Well, we're going into 2023 season and they can implement these changes.
Exciting.
So another listener feedback, not feedback, but a question, query that only we can answer because nobody else will touch this subject. We touched this subject a year ago for a couple of episodes in a row, and then we overstayed our welcome, I think, on the subject of
overtouched it.
pooping.
Oh yeah.
We overtouched the subject of pooping, but it's come back. It's come
Great.
back from a listener, and he has a really interesting take on pooping that I think needs to be discussed.
Great.
Okay. This is Monty from San Clemente. This came in an email. He said, just wanted to prompt a conversation about an extremely important but under-discussed surf strategy need. In a recent podcast, I think it was Dirty Water with Pete Mel, Pete discussed his morning ritual of drinking straight apple cider vinegar in the cold, steely gray NorCal mornings to void his bowels and prepare him to face the thundering surf of Mavericks. Any surfer who dawn patrols understands the vital importance of an early morning and complete bowel movement before suiting up, and likely knows the excruciating consequence of rushing into the water too early before everything has been expelled. Especially if the waves are too good to get out, peel down that wetsuit and brave whatever furtive bush, porta potty, or public park restroom that might await. It made me wonder, are there more strategies that people are hiding for a quick and effective morning download? A friend once hipped me to the power of downing a large amount of cold ice water before anything else upon waking. And I can attest that that actually works better than the obvious coffee method. I can't imagine facing monsters in the icy morning with the urgency of nature's calling churning in one's guts. But I'm sure that this has happened to many a Mavericks Charger. Please discuss this important issue, Monty.
So important. But I feel that there is no one size fits all solution here.
But there's best practices for sure.
There's best practices, get up earlier, right? Which is a problem. If you're dawn patrolling at say 6, it's rough to get up at 5, but I think you have to have that morning routine. That's the only thing and that's not even a guarantee, right? I mean, you could wake up an hour and a half early, do your routine, blah, 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 and have your gut seize when you're walking down the ramp at 6, right? It's happened to everybody.
Well, yeah. So you're right. Maybe this doesn't apply to everybody, but I could share some of my tried and true methods. Things that I have noticed in my life that affect that timeline. Movement. If I'm stationary for the first 2 hours of my day, I generally don't have any need to go. If I just get up, start checking emails, I'm on the computer. But as soon as I start moving around, take the kid for a walk, whatever, then I seem to notice that's when it comes on. So start with movement early is key. I would say also eating earlier the night before. If you just eat right before you go to bed, you have less time for digestion to take place. Maybe if you go to bed at 10, consider having dinner at 7 instead of 8 or 9.
Trust in us, David Lee Scales. Those are beautiful pieces of advice.
Or athleticgreens.com/surf, by the way, also helps keep you regular. I mean, that kind of green diet helps with digestion.
It's really true. But also, though, you're exactly right. All of these things are important. I can't even imagine going out and surfing big waves too. Like the extra amount of, but you got to eat the day before. You can't go out there starved. Like, I can't even imagine that kind of stress. But for our daily stresses, just know too that someday it's going to hit and it's going to be inopportune, and happens to everybody, right?
It does for sure. And the nervousness also stimulates the bowels. So if you're surfing Mavericks specifically, it's game on. You just gotta be near a toilet.
Do those boats and skis out there have little miniature toilets on them? Little potty training toilets?
They do make those, like portable toilets that you take with you camping or whatever.
I know they do.
Yeah, they should carry those on the boat. The thing is, there's so many cameras around and the boats are not private that you're guaranteed to get photos and video taken of you if you're squatting on a boat.
Maybe they should do it like the astronauts have, like inside the wetsuit, like some astronaut cup.
Billabong, we're looking at you. You guys created that. You created that inflatable vest thing. This is perfect. This fits right in line with that.
Way easier.
Way easier. And by the way, more relevance. I mean, this could be used by everybody. Very few people need an inflatable vest, but everybody needs this.
Every Dawn patroller.
Everybody needs the dang it. I'm trying to think of a clever name. The bladder. I
was gonna go, but Chill Killer is O'Neill. I was trying to go off a Chill Killer, but yeah, what is Billabong's
splatter bladder or something? Like what is well, thanks. Great feedback, Monty, or great question. This is something that I have thought about often. I just never discussed it publicly, but I'm going to say a couple of keys to success. Eat earlier the night before. Move around, but also, like he said, cold water. I've never heard that one before, but I'm going to say add AG1 to that. So 8 ounces of cold water with that scoop of AG1, so it's green, then move around before you leave the house, and that'll get you going.
Good to go.
Good to go. All right, let's go to commercial. We need to hear from Bubba Coos today, and then we'll come back with Barrel or Nah, of course. Right, Chas Smith, we got bubbacoos.com/surf. They just wrapped up the Breast Cancer Awareness Month. That's what we talked about last month. I think this month, and we have talked about how wonderful the food is. Of course, we've got feedback from listeners talking about that. I think we need to reset the topic with getting rich off burritos this month.
I mean, I think so too. It's funny. It's funny, David Lee. I look at my Instagram feed, scrolling through. I follow Bubba Coos. Do you?
Yes.
I'll get to Bubba Coos and I will stop and I will be staring at that picture of that delicious food. It gets me every time. And just, it seems like a guarantee. It's a burrito trap, a burrito honeypot, where if I just had a franchise, everyone would be stopping all the time. I don't know why people aren't franchising these, David Lee Scales.
Well, they are. I mean, like I said, when we first started talking about them a year ago, there was, I forget the number of franchises that I counted in Florida, but when we had Kevin Miller and John Brooks on a month ago, I recounted them and it was like doubled or tripled. So people are, yeah.
So we've led to good. And I'm so happy that people are getting rich off burritos.
I am too. I'm jealous of them, actually.
How do you sign up to be a franchise? Is there a franchise tab on their website?
Yeah, go to bubbacoos.com/surf. That'll there's a QR code there that you can just scan and you can download the app, but also there's a link to franchise opportunities there. And I would say California is the ripest for growth and development. There's only 2 locations currently in California. So free game. Anybody in California who's entrepreneurial, has a little bit of money they want to invest and see multiply, bubbacoos.com/surf.
And also, you're not going against, if you think you're going up against your traditional Mexican burrito places, you're not. It's a category of its own, Bubba Coos. It is. It's in a unique place.
It's inventive. And the judges' scorecards are adjusting to accommodate for invention. And so it's perfect timing.
It's so true.
All right, bubbacoos.com. All right, Chaz, we are back.
Great.
With Barrel or Nah. I had some true grit or clickbait stuff, but you know what? Surf ads shamed me enough to where I'm gonna shelve that topic until next week.
Yeah, we covered it. It's all wrong, but stay along for the ride. See where it goes. See where this takes us.
Oh, it'll be back. And it'll be back better than ever, thanks to Surf Ads gentle nudging.
Yep, it's true.
All right, Barrel or Nah. You don't go on Stab, but if you did, you would have seen Mateus Hurdy's latest edit. And in his edit, there was one Yago Dora who shared a section with him. Yago Dora had painted his wetsuit that had almost like for Halloween, like skeleton structure, organs, guts. And it reminded me of my youth growing up with Barney. Sean Barron had the Spider-Man suit. He always had these painted, maybe they were markered, but the question is barrel or not, painting or adorning your wetsuit.
I'm going to say we're back to barrel on this. I say like any fad, it comes and goes, right? Where the Wilco years, remember Matt Wilkinson's
Oh yeah.
those went a
Yeah.
bit too far, right? They were, I loved them at the time, but looking back on them, it's funny, but it's not very cool. But looking back on, I don't know, a good scribble on a wetsuit, I'm going to say is a current barrel, but watch out. Just like skinny jeans or other things, it goes out real quick and you may look back on yourself and think, ooh, why did I do that? So be aware that it could be a trend that you look back on and think, I did that wrong.
So I think it is absolutely barrel up until this episode gets published. And then anybody who implements it after, it's no barrel. And the reason is because it was like white wetsuits back in the day. Only Kelly Slater wore it. You know what I mean? Like, it is reserved for very few people. And Sean Barron was the guy because his surfing was so creative and inventive and good. Just he was doing barrel rolls back in 1992. You know, so if you do a barrel roll, you are allowed to wear a Spider-Man wetsuit that you designed yourself. And Yago Dora may not be doing a barrel roll, but he's surfing
Really good.
incredibly well and also really creatively and stylishly. So it's like he can get away with doing that. But as soon as somebody else, one of our listeners is going to paint something on their wetsuit and they're going to go try to, they can't even do a floater. You know what I mean? And then it just, then you're a kook.
I forgot. I accidentally thought that one without saying that if you are not a great surfer, leave your wetsuit alone. You have to be like, I'm going to say the bar. Chris Cote is allowed to paint his wetsuit. Anybody who surfs worse than Chris Cote is not allowed to paint their wetsuit.
Agreed.
So you can find.
And Chris Cote, I feel like Chris Cote might actually be inclined to paint his wetsuit. He has something that he needs to express, and his wetsuit's the perfect canvas for it.
And he could get away with it. He is like perfectly over that line, right? But if you're worse than Chris Cote, and if you have a question, go to Chris Cote's Instagram, easy to find, and just watch Chris Cote surf and then make an honest assessment. Do I surf better or worse than Chris?
The honest assessment is the crux right there, because people think they're being honest with themselves, but they haven't seen footage of themselves.
Well, we can, it's true. But if you have any footage, I mean, you and I feel this could be a service that we do. Do I surf better than Chris? A whole new segment where two people or people can send in a clip and we can measure it up against a Chris Cote clip and see.
I love it. Send it in today.
Yeah.
I think the vast majority, I would say 98% of the listeners fall below the line.
I would think so too. But those out there who think they surf better than Chris Cote, it is the November's Chris Cote challenge.
Perfect. Chris Cote, I feel like maybe 2 years ago or so, recommitted his, his interest in surfing and skating and fitness. Like, he got shredded, like maybe he lost some weight or something. He looked strong. And the clips that he started producing after that were as good as anything I ever saw in Daredevils back in the day.
I really love watching Chris surf. I'm not going to lie. I really
surf's good.
He's got a sort of everyman flair where you think, you know, that you can't do it, but it looks, Chris surfs good. There's something fun about watching Chris Cote surf.
The everyman thing, it's relatable. You think you can do it. You're like, gosh, yeah, if I just got a little bit more lean and strong, I could probably then do that. But you can't. You can't. You could try, but you can't. All right. So shout out to Chris and shout out to painting your wetsuit until you hear this episode, and then you're not allowed to do it. All right. Cool. Solved it. Barrel or not? Jumping from a life-threatening height into water.
Oh, I'm gonna go barrel. Like a cliff jump is a cliff jump is a rite of passage, I think.
Up until you turn 25.
It's true. There is I think the compulsion to do it, if it goes down after that, it's okay. But if you haven't done it, if you were up standing at the top of a cliff once or some high thing and refused to jump into the water below 25, then that's going to scar you for the rest of your life. You will have to maybe make up for that by going cliff jumping post 25. If you've done it though, if
Maybe.
you had that thrill, you can be done with it. That's okay. But also if you have kids, know that's coming for them. Encourage your children to jump off high things into bodies of water pre-25.
There's, have you ever walked up to the ledge, assessed it, and then walked away from the ledge?
I've only done that, not in terms of height, but in terms of clearance of something that I thought I couldn't actually get over. But
Like
in terms of
the distance outward before you hit the
distance,
water?
exactly. But any
Were other people doing it?
yes, but I really questioned my own. I know I blew it. I sissied out. Yeah, I just thought, oh, I didn't feel like I had the gainer on me.
I haven't attempted a cliff jump in a long time. And I had the compulsion to do it when I was young. I was almost searching for cliffs to jump off of when I was young,
Yeah.
or certainly if I was somewhere like in Hawaii, where there were opportunities, then I'd be searching for it. The compulsion has completely left my body.
Yeah.
And I will be somewhere and I see people doing the jump and I'm like, no interest in doing that whatsoever at this point in my life.
Even if it's easy access up, like, I mean, like a good 30 footer, you wouldn't look at a 30 footer and think, yeah.
Not really. No, I it's not fun to me anymore.
A nice,
like if you
blue water,
if you belly flop, not even, the thing is, now I've learned it's not even just a belly flop. You could just slightly be angled wrong and the water slaps your back a little bit weird or something. It just freaking hurts and you're injured for like 3 days. It's just, to me, it's not fun like it used to be.
It's still for something that's not like a crazy one. Up to 30 feet is still real fun, I'll say.
This story came off of a news story, or this Barrow and Awe came off of a news story from this past week. You wrote about it on Beach Grit, and it's about a couple in Huntington Beach. Not a couple, it was a sister and brother.
Yeah.
From Norwalk, which is 30 minutes from Huntington Beach. And they were at the Huntington Beach Pier. They were not surfers. They were not avid swimmers. The brother died from jumping off the pier. And the way that the story unfolded was the sister, for whatever reason, I don't know who is insane enough. First of all, a cliff jump or a pier jump's already sketchy, but to do it into the ocean when there's actual swell and there's actual current is just totally ignorant. I
mean, in your clothes, particularly. I mean,
you're not an avid swimmer. She's 39 years old, and she's not only not an avid swimmer, not particularly fit. So I don't know who you think you are that you could jump into an ocean, and much less from a pier. So anyways, the way that this story unfolded was she jumped into the ocean, landed. It's on video. This is one video I did watch. And the people on the pier are clapping like, oh, that was crazy, Well, pretty quickly finds herself in peril because there's current and there's waves. And so she starts getting swept down the beach. So a surfer ends up coming to her rescue, is trying to get her to safety. But in the meantime, her brother, who was on the pier, saw what was happening. So he jumps off the pier into the water and is never seen conscious again. So a surfer sees him floating unconscious, comes over to help him, gets him to the beach, but the guy ends up, I don't know if he died from impact, drowning, maybe hit the bottom. It was drowning. Okay. So maybe he hit the water and got KO'd and then drowned in that amount of time. So it's like a brother and sister are just having a nice time at the beach, decide to jump off a pier, and this ends up happening. It's like, it's tragic.
That was a tragic story. But I mean, but the Huntington Pier ain't that high. Like, again, totally tragic. They were enclosed. That was part of the problem. They were, I mean, not that it would have
probably shoes too.
Yeah, I think it were fully clothed.
Yeah, I mean, I see the junior lifeguards jump that pier at the very end of it where it's at its height.
Yeah.
So it's doable. It's just not advisable.
I mean, in clothes when you're from Norwalk, definitely.
I know. Super sketchy story. But it reminded me, watching that, I was like, man, I've been to the Huntington Beach Pier 3,000 times. Never once have I thought about jumping it.
Should we go do a pier jump? I guess not in light of this
Heck
story.
no. Heck no. Unless you can put me in a time machine and take me to pre-25, I have no interest at this point.
Okay.
All right. You're going barrel, I'm going nah.
I'm going barrel.
Final barrel or nah. As an adult male, taking a bath.
Oh, I'm going nah. As an adult male, yeah, nah. Yeah, I mean, I totally get it. If you're going to say, I need an Epsom salt from whatever, I'm sick, all of it. There's no way for a man to make a bath look good. No way.
Is it soothing? Is it calming though?
It doesn't matter. Like the look of it is so bad that mentally you should be tortured sitting there in the bath, even if your body is getting soothed and calmed.
I've revisited the idea of baths every so often. I'm going to say once every 2 years up until 3 years ago. And the way that went was I for some reason thought it would be calming. I thought it would be a way to relax or whatever. You find yourself sitting in that tub. First of all, I barely fit in it. I'm looking down at my body, not impressed. You know what I mean? I'm just like, wow, whose body is this? This is not a sexy moment. Thank goodness I am here alone because nobody else needs to see this. My next thought is the hot water only felt good for 4 minutes. On the 5th minute, I am very uncomfortable because of the heat. So then you try to cool it down a little bit. Well, then the cool gets too cool within 2 minutes. There's this constant game you're playing with the temperature. And it's like, even a jacuzzi is kind of really asking a lot of me. You got the bubbles in there, so that adds a little bit of a thrill or a little bit of comfort or soothing or whatever. But the bathtub, it doesn't have the bubbles. Nobody wants to see this. I'm fully naked. At least in the jacuzzi, I have board shorts on. Here, I'm fully naked, looking straight down. It's kind of actually demoralizing, is what it is.
It's a real no I mean, again, I think women can like both enjoy baths and make baths look good. I defy anyone besides the French dude dying in the bathtub, the whatever, the famous picture painting, whatever. I've never seen a man look good in a bath. Never once. I defy.
And you're sitting in your own filth. So like the function of it is broken too. Like, because every time I've done it, I then stand up and shower afterwards.
I mean, I think in general, it's a no. Pampering for a male is a no. Like where a bath is pampering, right? So anything where you are pampering yourself is a big no barrel.
That's a good point. Okay. I get it. That's a good point. Just stick to utility, stick to fixing things, solving problems. That's what you're good at.
Exactly.
That was very gender biased too.
Perfect.
Okay. Right on brand. All right. Well, hey, beachgrit.com, if you want to go read all those clickbait articles that we were talking about, get sucked into the Google ad vortex, read the comments on the wrong article, all of it.
All of it. It's the joys of Beach Grit. Come on in. The water is lukewarm.
I like Surf Ads ended with that as well. He's like, at the bare minimum, just get the comments on the right article. Classic. All right, cool. Well, hey, beachgrit.com, at surf journalist, at surf splendor. I've been posting on Instagram again for the first time in a long time. And then bubbacoos.com/surf, linkedin.com/surf, athleticgreens.com/surf, all of it /surf.
All of it.
Right on, Chaz. All right, next week, are we going to see each other at Album Surfboards?
Yes.
What are our plans?
In person, 100%.
Okay, that's always the plan.
Yeah.
Sometimes it comes together.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, I'll see you there. Until next week.
Bon voyage.